Okay, welcome to Word Without Walls. Welcome to the Wednesday night sunlight service. This is Love, Part 11. And tonight we're going to continue to look at what love does. Remember, we spent a couple of months kind of really studying what love is and looking at different aspects of what love is. And then last week, and also this week, we're really looking at what love does. And last week we saw that love gives, and it gives itself. He gives himself. And tonight, my thought for tonight is love lifts up. So that's what we're going to look at tonight. And I really only had one verse for tonight, so I decided to read it in a couple of different translations and really dig into it. But then I found another verse that I felt really, it really kind of says the same thing, but I wanted to include it, so I snuck another verse in. So we have two verses tonight. So, you know, again, a big part of Word Without Walls is just making this whole Christianity, this whole Jesus, this whole love thing accessible, knocking out the walls, making it easy, making it simple, not beating people over the head with it, not choking people with it, but just presenting it in a way that hopefully it can help us. It can be real for us. So my verse for tonight is James chapter 4 verse 10, and it really kind of says it all for my whole entire thought for tonight. James chapter 4 verse 10 reads, "Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and He shall lift you up." And really, to me, that's it. In a sense, it's almost kind of an if-then statement, but it's really more than that. Okay? Because the deal about love is, if you're searching for it, if you're looking for it, if you're trying to get it, you're really robbing yourself from the truth that you already have it. And that's what that was man's problem right from the very beginning. That's what got Adam and Eve into so much trouble. Okay, the serpent came and he said, if you do this, if you eat from this tree, then you'll be like God. When in fact, we were already like God. We were already made in His image. We just didn't know it because it was dark and we couldn't see Him. And because we couldn't see Him, we couldn't see ourselves. Okay, so again, if you're trying to lift yourself up, if you're trying to get something, if you're trying to earn something, if you're trying to do this in your own strength and your own power, then you've totally and completely missed the truth that it is finished. We don't have to earn His love because it's freely given. God has always loved us, and He will always love us, and there's nothing we can do about it. Okay, so really, why Jesus came and why He laid His life down for us and why He picked it back up for us, why He gave us His Spirit, was not so that all of a sudden we could transform into something that God could love. He didn't come to make bad people good and say, okay, now that you're good, now I can accept you and love you. That wasn't His mission. That's not why He came. He did not come to make bad people good. He came to make dead people alive. And the difference between life and death is love. If you know that you're loved, if you experience that love, if you dwell in that love, that's what it means to truly be alive. An abundant life, as simply as I can make it, is a life full of love. Okay, so that's what it truly means to be alive. And that's what He did for us. He allowed us to experience that love that was always there. Okay, back in the garden, when his natural eyes were opened and his spiritual eyes were closed, and he got some knowledge about good and evil, the first thing he did was he hid from the presence of God, because he saw all of his wicked deeds, all of his wicked works, and now all of a sudden he was God's enemy in his own mind. He said, you know what, I messed up, and now I know God's going to punish me. When God never said He would punish us if we ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He told Adam, the day you eat of that tree, you will surely die. And the reason for that is because the tree of knowledge of good and evil is the tree of death. And if you eat from the tree of death, what else could possibly happen? If you eat from the tree of death, you'll die. If you eat from the tree of life, you'll live. That's not punishment. That's just natural consequences of your actions. Okay, but see, man was trying to lift himself up. Man was trying to be like God. Man was trying to exalt himself. And that's where we get into trouble. Because, you know, with man it is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and He shall lift you up. Love is what lifts us up. We don't try to lift ourselves up in order to get love. That's backwards. That's not going to work. You can't earn something that is freely given. And if you're trying to earn something that you've already been given, all you're doing is robbing yourself from enjoying the gift that you've already been given. That's why God gave us His Spirit, His love receptor, so that we could receive the gift. So that we could release or share what we have instead of always trying to get something that we think we don't have. Now watch this. That phrase, humble yourselves, it's number 5013 in Strong's Greek Concordance, and it means to depress. Figuratively, to humiliate in condition or heart or abase. Bring low or humble yourself. And even though that word humiliate kind of has a negative connotation, here's what I got out of that. Sometimes love can make you look silly. Sometimes you have to get out of your comfort zone a little bit. Sometimes you have to do things that you don't ordinarily do in order to love somebody. Because loving somebody is not about you, it's about them. It's not about you trying to somehow, I'll love you if you love me, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. Love's about others. Love's about giving. Okay? Love's about, if I can say it this way, lifting someone else up. And sometimes, again, in order to do that, you have to do things that you might not ordinarily do. Because, again, not everybody receives love the same way. Some people, a word of encouragement is the best way to love them. Some people, a hug is the best way to love them. Different people receive it differently. So sometimes, we might have to do things that might make us feel a little different, a little silly. We might have to humble ourselves and say, I'm going to put your needs first. If this is what you need, and I have it, because I know that I'm loved, then I can give you what you need, and I don't have to worry about what I need, because I know that I have what I need. And then I love this part, when it says, humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord. The word sight, it's number 1799 in Strong's Greek Concordance, and it means face. And I love that because all the way back, even to the Old Testament, when God was speaking to Abraham, He said, walk before me, which really meant walk facing me, and then you will be perfect. That's how God wasn't saying, you better be perfect because I'm watching you. He said, watch me, and then you'll know how to be perfect. You'll see your perfection in me. That's the biggest thing I think we have to break. The biggest mindset I think we have to break is the one that says, I have to perform in order to be like God. When in fact, God says, if you look at me, if you get to know me, if you look in the mirror with an unveiled face, you'll see my glory. Because I've given my glory to you. And when you see that glory, you'll be changed into that same image from glory to glory. We walk facing Him, and that's how we become what we behold. And then the same thing with Noah. Where did Noah find grace? He found it in the eyes of the Lord. He found it by looking God in the face. Not by running from Him. Not by thinking God's looking over his shoulder, just waiting to get him when he messes up. But face forward, facing Him, looking into His eyes, seeing the love and the grace in God's eyes is what fills us up with that love and that grace. That's what allows us to see anything and everything else with that same grace, with that same love. That's how we are lifted up. Not by lifting ourselves up, but by humbling ourselves in His sight, in His face, by saying, this isn't about me. This is about you. I'm going to look at you. I'm going to see in your face, in your sight, in your eyes. I'm going to see what's available to me. And when I look into somebody else's eyes, I'm going to see what they need. And I'm going to give it to them because you've given it to me. And then the phrase, He shall lift you up. It's from two words in the Greek, number 5312 and number 5209. And it simply means elevate you. So again, if we're willing to humiliate ourselves, if we're willing to abase ourselves, if we're willing to make ourselves look silly, if we're willing to do something outside of our comfort zone for somebody else, that's when God elevates us. That's when He lifts us up. And again, I think it's this same circle of love, circle of friendship kind of deal where we love one another, and that's how we most feel loved. I think that's why Jesus said it's more blessed to give than to receive. Because when you receive something, that sometimes that feels pretty good, but sometimes, at least for me, when somebody gives me something, I always kind of feel like, do I really deserve this? You know, is it okay for me to have this? Like, I always feel a little bit weird when somebody gives me something. But when I give somebody something else, I feel great. I feel pure. I feel like I've really accomplished, I've really done what I'm here to do. And again, I think that the most real way that we truly receive God's love is by releasing it. Because if you can't give what you don't have, then giving love proves to yourself that you have it. Stepping out in faith, if you want to say it that way, and really humbling yourself in His sight, in His face, looking at Him and saying, it's not me, but it's Him in me, it's Him through me, and it's Him as me. When we really can do that, when we really can stop worrying about ourselves, stop worrying about our positions, and again, just humble ourselves, just lower ourselves, just say, I'm going to get down here with you so I can help lift you up, then what do we find is that we've been lifted up. And I really think that's how it works. And again, you know, here's my other verse I added to the sermon. Jesus said as much in Matthew 23, verse 12. Jesus said, and whoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. So again, if you're trying to get something, you're not going to be able to get it. But if you rest in what you have, that's when what you have just explodes. That's when the ever-expanding kingdom expands. That's when the light that's in you shines. If you're trying to get the light, if you're like, man, I'm so full of darkness, I need some light, then you've totally and completely missed the truth that you are the light. Okay? God is the light, and in Him is no darkness at all. He lives in you. So in you is no darkness at all. And it may not always seem that way, it may not always feel that way, but I'm telling you, that's the truth of the matter. That's when we get in trouble, is again, when we impose that darkness on ourselves. When we mess up and we say, look, see? Darkness. And God says, I don't see darkness because I'm light. And wherever light is, darkness flees. There's no darkness in Him at all. So again, it's this idea. Jesus said that He came to minister, not to be ministered to. He came to serve, not to be served. Okay, but if we're so worried about getting things for ourselves, if we're so worried about elevating ourselves, if we're so worried about exalting ourselves, then we totally and completely miss it. And really, you know, it's like, I think Jesus said in another place, He's like, if you take the best seat, you know, they might ask you to move because somebody greater than you comes. But if you take the worst seat, then the only thing that can happen is that they can move you up to a better seat. Then you put yourself in a position to be exalted. Alright? Because if you try to force yourself into the best seat, the only place you can go is down. But if you start at the bottom, you know, when I worked for the city of Auburn Hills years ago, we had this catchphrase we said, like if a day didn't start out right, we would go, man, we're starting at the bottom and we're working our way down today. But that's not spiritual, that's not scriptural, because in the spirit, when you start at the bottom, there's only one place to go, and it's up. And I'm convinced that sometimes you need to hit rock bottom before you can start to go up. Sometimes you have to totally, like, you have to try everything. Okay, that's what happened in I believe it's in the book of Ecclesiastes. Okay, he had to try everything before he could finally say, none of this stuff satisfies. None of this stuff is what I'm looking for. I've been looking for love in all the wrong places all my life. Okay, but now my eyes are open. Now I've humbled myself in the sight of the Lord, and now He has lifted me up. Now He has brought me to the source, which is Himself. Now I'm plugged in, I'm grafted in. Now I'm a branch that's connected to the vine. Now I know where my love comes from. Now I know how that fruit of the Spirit grows. And I don't have to try to produce that fruit. I can just simply bear it. I can enjoy it and share it. And that's what love does. Okay, love expands. Love lifts us up. Now let's read it in the Amplified Bible. James chapter 4 verse 10 in the Amplified reads like this. Humble yourselves, feeling very insignificant in the presence of the Lord, and He will exalt you. He will lift you up and make your lives significant. Okay, I can tell you again personally from my own life, like I always like to pick on myself so nobody else gets offended. A lot of the time I feel pretty insignificant. A lot of the time I feel like, all this stuff I'm doing, all these rants I write, all these books I write, all these messages I preach, I feel kind of insignificant. I feel like, is this making a difference? Does anybody care about this? But guess what? I do it in the presence of the Lord. I do it, in a sense, I do it for other people because, I present it, I put it out there, it's for y'all. But in a greater sense, I'm doing this for the Lord. I'm doing this because He has put it in my heart to do it. I'm doing this not to get something from Him, but because I have something from Him. Okay, this word, if it really does get in me. If I don't let it out for a little while, it's like a fire shut up in my bones. It really is. It's something inside of me that I just have to get out. Okay, so even though when I do it, sometimes I might feel insignificant. I might not feel like it's a big deal. Okay, but what happens is, when we do something for the Lord, no matter what it is, He takes it and He magnifies it. And He takes us and He exalts us. Remember what Jesus said. He said, "He that shall humble himself shall be exalted." And that's where this picked up in the Amplified. It says, He will exalt you. He will lift you up and make your lives significant. Okay, I use this story a lot because, really because I like cookies. But when I worked for the law firm years ago, the person who sat next to me at our desks, okay, she was not my best friend. We were not super close. We sat next to each other. I knew her a little bit. But one day she came in and she was talking about how she missed breakfast and she was really, really hungry. And I was sitting there waiting until lunch because I had a big chocolate chip cookie that I wanted to eat so bad. And then when she said she was hungry, the next thing I knew, I was handing it to her without even thinking about it. Without even, that was my cookie that I wanted. Okay? And I gave it to her without a thought. And that can be an insignificant thing. That can seem kind of small to give someone a cookie when they're hungry, to give someone a cup of cold water when they're thirsty. But I guarantee you that made her day. And not only that, but it opened a connection between us. Okay, I humbled myself and I gave up what I wanted for somebody else. And the best part of it is I didn't have to force myself to do it. Okay, this idea of I have to love everybody and if I don't love you, then I'll fake it until I make it. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that at all. I believe that when we know that we are loved, that love fills us to overflowing and it comes out naturally. It comes out to a point where it probably wouldn't have mattered who would have said they were hungry in that instant. Because I had what they needed and I just gave it. Okay? And that's what love is. Love lifts us up. It brings us out of that selfish, self-centered, kind of, me, I have to protect myself, I have to take care of myself, and it puts us in a place where we can humiliate ourselves in the condition of our heart, where we can say, this isn't about me, where we can say, we can abase ourselves. Paul said, I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. He said, it doesn't matter what situation I'm in, because I know God loves me. Because I know the love that's inside of me. And when you know the love that's inside of you, then that love is what carries you through any situation. That love is what lifts you up in any situation. That love is what allows you to love in any situation. Okay, so what we see here, again, is that's something small. That's a little thing. That's humbling. That was me humbling myself. And really kind of feeling insignificant, like, okay, yeah, I gave her a cookie, big deal. Okay, but it was a big deal. Because even the smallest gesture of love can mean the world to somebody else. Because when you don't feel loved, and then somebody shows you that you are, man, there's nothing bigger than that. And then we see how significant our lives really are. Then we see how connected we really are in that love, through that love, because of that love. Okay, then we see that in a sense that I was put in that position with that cookie for just such an occasion. I don't remember. I think it was Queen Esther who in her story, I think her uncle said, who knows? Maybe you were here for just such an occasion. Okay, maybe this is why you're in this position. Maybe you're not feeling very significant. Maybe you're not feeling like things are where you want them to be. But guess what? You're a lighthouse. And if there's darkness somewhere around you and that light begins to shine out of you, guess what? There's no darkness around you anymore. Okay, so again, here's what I'm saying. Love lifts us up, and we love by lifting each other up. I've said this many times, but I believe the only reason we should ever look down on anybody is not to condemn them, is not to pile on, but to simply reach down and help them up. Okay, I think it's in the Old Covenant. I like to quote this verse, but I can never remember where it's at, and I can never get it quite right. But God told the people of Israel, I think it's when they were in bondage in Egypt, He said, I'm going to come down to you, and I'm going to lift you up, and I'm going to bring you out of this. I'm going to bring you out of bondage, and I'm going to bring you into the promised land. Okay, and that's what He did to natural Israel, rather. And then that's what Jesus did in fullness on the cross. He brought us out of the bondage of sin and death. He brought us out of the bondage of unbelief, or of believing that I have to earn Daddy's love. He brought us out of that bondage, and He brought us into a promised land that flows with milk and honey. Okay? And milk represents righteousness, and honey represents revelation. That's what the promised land flows with. It flows with His righteousness that we are. Okay, right? Jesus became sin so that we might become the righteousness of God. Righteousness isn't something we have. Righteousness isn't something we do. Righteousness is who we are. We are the righteousness of God. Okay, when God is righteous, He does it through us. Okay, and revelation. Again, our identity, who we are. That's what the promised land is, and that's why it's rest. Because if you know that you're righteous, and you have a revelation of who God really is, then you don't have to do anything else in order to be accepted, in order to be loved. Then you can stop trying to earn it, and you can start sharing it. Then you can really be able to humble yourself. Then you can really be able to look silly, or to abase yourself, to bring yourself low in order to lift someone else up. And when you lift someone else up, that's when He lifts you up. When you do something, even though it makes you feel insignificant, even though you think this isn't making a difference, when you do something like that in the presence of the Lord, or again, in the sight of the Lord, if you do what you do because you know how loved you are, that's when God says, all right, watch this, now I can do something with you. Okay, we always talk about how God's not looking for ability, He's looking for availability. Okay, all He wants is a heart that's willing to share what it has. All He wants is somebody who's going to say, I don't need anything from you, but I have what you need, so I'm going to give it to you. All God's ever looking for is people who are willing to lose their life in order to find it. Remember what Jesus said, the greatest expression of love that a man can have is to lay down your life for your friends. To take what you have and to say, I want you to have this. And again, the only way we can do that is if we know what we have. The only way that we can give something that we have is if we experience it first for ourselves. Okay? That's why you receive it and release it. And I know it's kind of tricky. Sometimes, I almost kind of confuse myself when I talk about you have to receive it and release it, but the most real way to receive it is to release it. But here's what I'm saying. Faith comes from hearing, and hearing comes from the Word of God. Okay, when you hear that still small voice saying, Daddy loves you, when you feel the heartbeat of God in your chest, when you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are loved, that's when you can love. He lifted you up, and now you can lift someone else up. Okay, so that's what love does. Love does not leave people where they're at. Okay, love always elevates. Love always brings you up higher. Even in Revelation, I believe John the Revelator, he heard the voice say, come up and see, come up and see. It was always come up. It was never stay where you are. Okay, when what we think of as the people of Israel were wandering in the desert of sin, they weren't really wandering at all. God led them every step of the way. He led them as a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire during the night. He didn't say, you're on your own, good luck. He said, I'm here with you every step of the way. He said, you messed up and you're not getting into the promised land for a whole generation. He said, you're not going to get in the promised land. But he didn't leave them, and he didn't forsake them, and he stayed with them every step of the way. And then the next generation was able to then enter in, to then take hold of the promise, because they weren't stuck on the old stuff. Okay, we get stuck on the old stuff so easily. Okay, but the old has passed away. And behold, all things are become new. And the number one thing that has become new is us. Okay, he didn't make all new things. He didn't discard us and start over again. He made us new. He renewed us. He made in us a clean heart, and he renewed in us an upright spirit. He elevated us. He lifted us up. And now that he did that to us, now we can lift each other up. Now that we have what we always wanted, now we can stop trying to get it and we can humble ourselves. We can say, yeah, I'm up here now, so now I can reach down. Now I can help you up too. Okay, that's what Jesus did. He came down to where we were at. I don't know why we have this idea where like we think like God is allergic to sin, or God is afraid to sin, or if I mess up, God's going to run away from me and leave me. When in fact, the opposite happens every time. Okay, when we mess up, that's when a daddy is ready to help. Okay, I always tell Logan, he if he wants to do something, he starts with, Dad, I need help. I always tell him, son, you try your best, and if you can't do it, I will help you. Okay, and that's how God is too. He wants to help us. But again, if we think we can do it on our own, if we don't need his help, then I think he'll let us try. Okay, and that's what the law was all about. The law was given to bring us to the end of ourselves, to show us that we couldn't do it, to show us that as self-righteous as we were, there's always one thing we lacked, and the thing we lacked was the heart. The thing we lacked was again, the rich young ruler. What did Jesus say he lacked? He said, sell all your stuff and give it to the poor. He said, give what you have, and the rich young ruler didn't want to do that. Okay, he had stuff, but more importantly, stuff had him. And he was too tied into his possessions to really understand the presence of God. And that presence of God is that presence of love. It's that presence of giving. It's that presence of laying your life down for someone else. Okay, and when you lay it down, he picks it up. Okay, when you give yourself, he gives himself to you. When you humble yourself, he exalts you. He lifts you up. And again, I'm not saying it's not a formula to say, I want to get exalted, so I'm going to humble myself. Because if you want to get exalted, again, Jesus said, whoever shall exalt himself shall be abased. So if you're trying to say, I'm going to humble myself so that I can get exalted, again, you've missed the point. Okay, because the be-all end-all is not to be exalted. The be-all end-all is to love one another as we are loved. And that's, to me, what it means to humble yourself in his sight. Or again, to abase yourself, to bring yourself low in his face, to see that I don't need to get up anywhere because God's down here with me. And if he's down here with me, then I don't have to go anywhere, and I don't have to do anything in order to get what I'm looking for. All I have to do is look into his eyes, and then I'll find what I'm looking for. And then once I find it, and really it's like the Wizard of Oz, what you find is that you've had it all along. And then once you know that you've had it all along, then you can start to share it. Okay, I think there's two reasons people do things in this life. I think the number one reason people do things is because they want to get something that they think they don't have. Okay, and that's kind of tragic to me. Because the other way to do it is to give something because you know what you do have. Okay, one feels empty, one feels dark and void, one is trying to find that thing, and the other one is filled with the light, can see clearly, knows what he has, and can share it. And again, it's more blessed to give than to receive. Okay, if you're trying to get it for yourself, then you're not giving. And that's sad because again, if you feel like you don't have that love, then it might take something insignificant to make you feel significant. Okay? Because if you do something for someone else, that makes them feel better. Unless you're me. Because if you do something for me, then I feel weird. But for most people, when you do something, when you give something, it's easy to receive that. Especially if it's a physical need. Like, I'm hungry, okay, then I'll give you food, now you feel better. And I feel better because I gave you something, I helped you feel better. And again, it just feeds on itself, and it feeds on itself, and it grows, and it grows, and it grows. So that is what I have for this week. That is what love does. Love gives itself, love lays its life down, and love lifts up. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you for all of your support. I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Amen.